Welcome to Terror in Bloom, the podcast that brings you voices from the first wave of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic from Maryland and across the U.S. On episode 5 of Terror in Bloom, interviewees will discuss details and challenges of quarantine life during COVID-19.
Attention! Shelter-in-place orders are in effect for Maryland.
Our parks are closed, and they've been closed since early April. I had a park I was pretty much living in just right on the backside of my house here, a nice pathway, and that's been closed. But and our stay-at-home order was supposed to be through the 22nd, but it's been extended indefinitely because we're starting to be a hot spot for the virus. And so they're I like that they're cautious. I'm a little antsy, but at the same time, I'm also kind of enjoying having this extra time at home. So.
I think people, they really need to take it serious. There are still people out there that aren't taking it serious. They think it's not real, whatever. They're comparing it to the flu that comes around every year. I just think people should take it more serious. I think, they should. A lot of the states have spiked higher with their numbers. We're lucky in Massachusetts. I don't know what Maryland's numbers are down there, but ours are pretty good. Our numbers are pretty good here. I don't know. I mean, we were lucky. We were lucky. Of course, the doctor had told us, he said, yeah, you're both lucky. You can go home. They said, you're kind of on the line of the age because we're 68. So they said, you're kind of on the line of the people that get it serious and everything. But they said, yeah, you're both healthy. You have no other health issues. So go home. And I think that's a lot of it, too. People that already have underlying issues, whether they're diabetic or they have like COPD or they're overweight or they've had a heart attack. People like that are kind of vulnerable anyway, and to get hit with the COVID, it's pretty serious. It's really serious stuff.
I actually feel it's had a positive impact. Having my 6-year-old kindergartner home has been actually really wonderful. My husband, Brendan, has been working from home at least half the time. He had a couple of weeks straight through that he was working from home. So having the whole family home together and everything slowing down was actually really, really nice. There were no swim lessons to go to. There was no art classes to go to. There was no gym classes. We were home and were able to make the best of it. We did a lot of hiking. We played outside. We got to watch the kids play in the yard. We utilized our yard and our deck more than we probably ever have. So I think overall it's been really great. At the beginning, it was a huge adjustment from going to online schooling. That was also at the time that the numbers of COVID patients were the highest in the hospital, and we saw the most emergency situations. So I would come home from work stressed, sad, exhausted. The mental fatigue was huge. So logging in even to my daughter's Zoom classes and, not being able to find the password, it felt like too much. It was too much. But once we got into a routine with that, things at work sort of stayed the same for a little while. So we got to get used to that a little bit more. It was a little bit easier to recover. I feel like our family life actually, it's been really nice actually. My kids are super happy. They played together more than ever. So I'm actually thankful for the time that we've had.
I'm able to get out to go to the store when I need to. I drive Nancy to work and pick her up each day, although she works at home frequently since the quarantine started because we're both in the elderly vulnerable classification, I guess you'd say. But I've always worked at home. It's nice having Nancy here. And we have ample space on a front porch and a back deck where we can sit, which I go often to. and I spend a lot of time on the phone, and I do spend a lot of time watching television, which I probably shouldn't spend as much. But I can't say it's been extremely difficult, though. I do notice that it affects some aspects of short-term memory, and that's mostly it. It's been largely not a problem.
I know 2 members of my family that made homemade masks that are very cute. So when they go to the commissary, they actually have to wear masks when they go out. We still have a choice here, even though our lockdown is a little bit more severe than theirs. But they actually have to wear masks everywhere they go. All Bethy's family and mom and dad.
Wow. Well, we're an epicenter certainly here on the East Coast. I mean, there's a couple of others, but we do have the most cases, and it's sad and it's terrifying. And at the time that we finally got a quarantine going, there were an awful lot of people sick. I know several people who have been very ill. I know a couple of other people who are not very ill, but they were ill and got an antibody test positive, and that's scary. It's scary thinking how many people we know personally have been affected by this because things didn't get taken seriously fast enough, and a lot of people were crying out and calling out, "Hey, let's do something here. Let's help fix things," and it just didn't happen. Even though, because of our major airports and because of the amount of people we get regularly in from other places, that we were going to be hit hard, and that's really what happened. And we know people in our building even who have fled the city. Unfortunately, I don't think they fled to places that are going to be any better for them in the long run. To places where they had family and thought, well, this is going to be better for all of us. And including a family here had 3 really young kids, and they fled to South Dakota rather. And of course, South Dakota ended up having a ton of problems too. So it's hard to imagine from our point of view here that they did the wrong or the right thing. I guess it was the right thing for them. Anyway, quarantine has been interesting since my husband has now been working at home since March 13th. And, I've been working at home for a year and a half. So to me, this is no big deal. But for him, it's kind of been a real big adjustment. He's never had to do that. He's worked at home before, but never the 2 of us at the same time. So it's a little crowded. Our apartment isn't that big. And, we have, now we're having to deal with, at first it was a lot, I guess, more intense at first. The March through April was much more intense in terms of, are we going to get sick? Are we going to make a terrible mistake that we could have avoided that's going to have us get sick? We're both high risk people. We have high blood pressure, a couple of other issues that we're really very frightened for to get sick this way. And it's not a fun idea to know so many other people who have gotten sick who also have these issues. And there's nothing you can do for them except, say hi and, say you hope they're feeling better. And thankfully they are for the most part, but who knows what's going to happen. So we feel bad for them, and that's traumatic. Although honestly, when you get to our age, you start losing people. I've already lost a bunch of people in my life who were my age or younger than me, and this is like accelerating the process, so that's not good. And it's a trauma. It's a genuine trauma. And the people around me are having those same traumas because they know people, etc. A friend of mine's son is an emergency room doctor at Elmhurst Hospital, which is absolutely one of the epicenter spots. And she's frightened for him, and we're frightened for him. And he's okay. He's still kicking. He's doing okay. He's not sick. He's still doing his job, but it could go very badly. Who knows at some point. We have an urgent care practically across the street from us that always has some people in masks, looking at their phones and hanging around, and they're getting tested or they're getting treated for something. There were always a lot of ambulances going around because where we live is not that far from a lot of major hospitals. on the east side, and the ambulances have died down recently. In the last, say 3 to 4 weeks, the number of ambulances definitely died down. But so it's more like a normal, background noise. But in the stores, we were among the people who were frantically going to the store early in March, in mid-March, and stocking up on things, thinking, well, what can we cook if one of us gets sick? What can we cook that a sick person would want to eat? What would we want to do with that? And since I'm the one who cooks in this house, as opposed to the one who makes just peanut butter sandwiches, it was kind of a real question. And fortunately, that hasn't been impacting so far, but I know a lot of people along with me, and not just in New York City, are saying, well, yeah, we bought all these canned goods and let's not eat them yet, just not yet, because who knows. And now we're at the point where I'm going to the grocery store twice a week with a mask and with hand sanitizer, and people, if there's a line to get in, people do their distancing. And once you're in the store, you just sort of hurry around and do what you get what you need and hurry out again. There are a couple of restaurants open near us that we want to keep supporting. Our pizza places and our favorite diner, which is right on the corner. It was a 24/7 diner, and we practically lived there some weeks, if we didn't feel like dealing with, food or whatever. And they are managing to stay open, for limited hours for takeout and delivery, and people are hanging out there and making the most of it. And, it's still a neighborhood gathering spot, and some people keep their distance and some people don't, because I think there's a sense that, well, I know this person, they're not sick, I'll be okay if I'm near them. And I'm not that comfortable with that. I know these people too, but I'm not that comfortable with that idea. Excuse me. And the pizza places are grateful for your business, and the burger place that's not part of a big chain, they're grateful for our business. There's a couple of sushi places still open, and so you just sort of try to say, okay, what can I do to support my local neighborhood? And that's what you do, you support the businesses. So we're doing that. It is exhausting. It is exhausting because every time you go outside, even when I use the laundry room downstairs, I'm like, well, who else used it? And I know that our super is keeping the place spotless. She's doing a really good job spraying bleach and disinfectant on everything, because there's 34 apartments in this building. It's not huge, but it's big. And, while I don't think there are any recorded, and nobody in this building has been sick, we don't know if that's going to last. Again, you always have this terrible sense of, oh my God, have I made a terrible mistake and touched the wrong thing or inhaled at the wrong time? And like one of our neighbors in this building, she works in the supermarket across the street. She's worked there for years and we're good friends, but she is still on the job with masks and gloves and disinfectants, and she's doing her bit, as an essential worker, and she doesn't have a big long commute, which is good for her because she has a lot of physical disability issues. And I'm scared for her. I'm scared for her much more than I am for anyone in this building, other than a couple of very old ladies who are here. There's my neighbor across the hall is in her 90s. And she has aides coming in every single day from somewhere else in the city to care for her. And they don't always wear masks when they're running around the building or doing errands for her. And I don't know that she cares or not. I honestly don't. I'm not asking her, but so that's why using the laundry room can be a little, you don't want to really take a chance on something stupid like getting your clothes clean. So, we do get outside, we get some fresh air, we get some exercise, we're sensible, we think, about it, but you just always wonder.
Yeah, and I was so glad I had a student teacher because I lost my voice for a couple of days, and I lose it every fall and every spring, or I sound like a Smurf. And I was just so thankful because I'm always so exhausted, and teaching at a computer screen for 3 hours a day, trying to be all perky and happy and encouraging. It's like, when I'm done, I'm just like, okay. And my husband, I come home, my husband works at home, so he doesn't see people all day. He sees them on his screen or phone calls and stuff. So he likes to chat. I'm like, I'm kind of done chatting right now. I need a break. So, but yeah, he gets to see what's going on in the neighborhood, because since my son moved out, he moved. I'm at the dining room right now. This summer, my husband was at the dining room working, and then my son was up in his room upstairs. So now my husband moved his workstation upstairs into my son's room. So now he can look out over the neighborhood, and we figure there's a daycare, legal daycare happening down the street, because we see all the parents dropping off the kids. And just, all the happenings in the neighborhood, he gets to see it all, because he's, that's where his window is right now. So, and our dog is never leaving his side, because he's been home, or someone's been home with our dog every day since December when my son graduated. So my dog is always like, if we're somewhere, the dog's always right there.
I know people who were taking it really far. They were going they're like leaving their groceries out on the porch for 3 days before, not touching them. And, we were kind of doing that with a few things also. And now we wipe stuff down before we put it in the fridge, which I don't think is a stupid thing to do. I think it's careful, but, we wash our hands a lot. But yeah, that it's traumatic. It does wear at you after a while. And the thing is, people have gone through this in history who had no recourse. They knew about germs, but they didn't know exactly what to do about them. And, and they were like, you see things happening, you see historical records from the 1918 in the Spanish influenza, well, not Spanish influenza, just the Great Influenza, that where people were also resisting, the simple measures. And as a result, a lot of people additionally got sick and died who didn't have to. So for all the exhaustion and for all the mental, tiredness you experience after a while from fear and from uncertainty, you gotta listen to that voice. You gotta listen to it and just say, okay, I can make it through another day if I keep doing this. There's a lot of people who have trouble forming habits. I'm one of them, but I have not had a lot of trouble forming these habits because I know what the stakes are.
Well, I and my children have not been out of our apartment in 5 weeks. So we are completely housebound. Everything that we need is either being shipped in or we're not using it. We haven't been outside except for a couple of times out on a balcony at all. The kids go to school from the house on the computer. They get their therapy sessions because they're special needs on the computer. And it's pretty much lockdown around here. I've always had food delivered.
He's actually out right now. He decided to go take a walk. He has Friday hours now from his job during the summer, which is nice. He's a computer programmer. Okay. He's working with a large. He works. He's working. He's part of a team working with in a large, I guess, international corporation, doing some of their software and one of their software products. And so working from home is fine because all he needs is his laptop. He's perfectly okay. Just doing the work there, and he and his team check in with each other every day, and he's responsible for training one of the team members. So he's always on the phone with him, helping him figure out what's the problem with this module and what's the problem with that, with this portion, which is kind of interesting because now I get to hear what he's like at work. Whereas my work is almost entirely done with email, so I don't have to actually talk to the people I'm working with, which is kind of nice. I get to talk to my friends instead and save my energy for that. But he's making sure he gets out of the house every day for a walk, for some exercise, for some fresh air. He needs that. He's been doing that, as long as I can remember. So he's just doing what he does. I, on the other hand, can be really lazy and not get out of the house sometimes for days, especially if the weather's bad. So, I'm still trying to get some exercise, even if it's just taking the stairs, in the building, or doing a video or something. So I miss going to the gym. Gosh, I miss going to the gym.
I miss the opportunity to move about with freedom and to walk around, which I would frequently do when I went to the store to get a little exercise and fresh air. And I'm not sure I miss much. It has not had a big impact on me, except in the areas I've described.
When they're going to open and how safe it's going to be when they're going to open. We're still having 2,000 people a day show up at the emergency rooms, and we still have today 540 people died. So, we're just really nowhere near ready to open. So, how long this is going to last, how I'm going to keep the kids occupied, whether we'll ever get out of the house. Those are major concerns. I know realistically we're a couple months out before people are going to be able to really go out and do anything. Everything's closed. There's nothing open. So you've got the occasional grocery store open. Some of the pharmacies are open. A couple of restaurants here and there are open, but it's basically locked down.
We're just going to the supermarket across the street. There's usually a line. They want people to be, they want people to be behaving sensibly inside the store, and they don't want too many people in the store at once. So there's always someone outside, letting people in as people go out. So we just go in and get what we need twice a week. It's really all, our needs are simple and few for food. There's just the two of us. We don't have any pets. So, we don't have a lot of special needs, shall we say. But since I'm the one who's responsible for the cooking and for the for deciding what we should buy, I'm having to be a lot more, instead of just going to the store every day, which I used to take for granted and say, oh, what am I going to make tonight? I don't know. Let me get some of this. Let me get some of that. I have to think a lot more ahead in terms of, what am I going to get that'll last us for, leftovers for 4 days, or for, what can I buy that I can stretch out for a couple of days? So I have to think about things more than I did. But that's just because I live in an area where the food stores are like right there. So anytime I went out for the day, it's like, oh, I'll just stop at the store on my way home. It was never a big deal. So, that's, I can't say that's a hardship at all. It's a good thing because, gosh, the food budget looks actually better than it used to. Eating more rice and beans is good, So, yeah, I'm worried for personal concerns is that we continue to not make the fatal mistake. And they're going to try and start opening up parts of the city soon, and everyone I know who lives in the city, I mean, I know a lot of people who don't feel this way, but I don't know many of them personally, are just not going to participate in that. We don't have to. We're consumers rather than producers. We're not store owners. We're not, essential personnel in that sense. And I'm worried for my friends who are essential personnel. I'm worried for my friends who work at Trader Joe's. I'm worried for my friends who work in the medical field. I'm worried for my friends who work in restaurants or I know people who do these things, and my neighbor at the supermarket, and I'm worried for them that people are going to relax their guard too much because now you can get a haircut or now you can get a pedicure. And those things just aren't very important in the scheme of things when we're not really sure yet what can happen after. I mean, we're seeing all these other states, all these places, all these cities having a huge spike now in cases because they opened up too soon. They didn't take, they were so gung-ho to open up, and now they're having a big resurgence of illness, and I don't want New York City to have that again also, because we already had this terrible ordeal, and it just upsets me that so many people who live here are not cognizant of that. They're not buying it. They're hanging out on, I'm not even talking about what's going on with the protests. That's completely separate right now. It's not what we're talking about. They were just already, going to parks and hanging out in big groups and because it was a nice day and they weren't wearing their masks. And okay, again, maybe you think you know these people so well that you're hanging out with that they can't possibly be sick, or they've told you. But what if they're not aware that they're sick? What if they're a spreader? What if they are just asymptomatic? I mean, you cannot, unless they've been tested, you cannot trust them to be, not a danger to you. And it sounds awful to say that, but it's the fact. So that's my worry, is that we're just going to see another big mess coming up, and the medical community isn't going to have a break, and they're not going to be able to, and it's just going to be a mess all over again, like nothing, like we learned nothing.
When they're going to open and how safe it's going to be when they're going to open. We're still having 2,000 people a day show up at the emergency rooms, and we still have today 540 people died. So, we're just really nowhere near ready to open. So, how long this is going to last, how I'm going to keep the kids occupied, whether we'll ever get out of the house. Those are major concerns. I know realistically we're a couple months out before people are going to be able to really go out and do anything. Everything's closed. There's nothing open. So you've got the occasional grocery store open. Some of the pharmacies are open. A couple of restaurants here and there are open, but it's basically locked down.
Our corner diner, which always had, a bar, it's not an open bar or anything. I mean, it's not like a fancy bar. It's just like a bunch of bottles behind the baked goods counter. But you get people ordering, they sell wine and beer, but they also had mixed drinks, from that bar area. Well, with only having takeout and delivery these past couple of months, they decided to hire, I guess I'm not entirely clear what the relationship is, but they hired one of these guys who goes to bars to promote particular brands of drinks. And they set them up in the front of the diner, which is open to the street. It's a big, they open up and they have tables outside in the summertime. So they open that up there, and he's got tubs of ice, and he's got all these bottles of the brand that he's promoting, and people hanging around, behind the flowered planters and drinking, out of disposable plastic cups, their iced, Manhattans and rye drinks and whatever. It's some brand of rye, I forget. And I'm thinking, you guys are not wearing your masks doing this. I don't care if you know each other for 15 years. Don't do this. For God's sake, don't do this. And of course, nobody's bothering them because it's the Upper East Side. Nobody gets bothered for stuff like that. It's just blah. They're misusing their privilege. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, same idea. It's like,
Just to take it seriously, these reports that I hear coming out of other states where they're protesting in the streets to open up, I understand that they don't have the kind of numbers that we have, but the numbers are doubling. 17,000 people died this week in the United States. So it's a scary situation. And if they're not careful, they're going to have some problems in places where they didn't have problems. It only takes one person to infect other people. They were talking here when we hit the pandemic here, one person infected was infecting 1.4 people. We're down now to means that one person is infecting a little bit less than a person. But you're talking one person in a crowd of 200 people, and you can, you've got a massive problem on your hands. So I mean, it's nothing to trifle with. And when it gets started and it gets started bad, you can't stop it so fast.
I guess my experiences are really very particular to my neighborhood and to our lifestyle. We are quiet, kind of stay-at-home people anyway. So being under quarantine hasn't made us nuts. It hasn't made us feel that we're not free, that we're not, that we're not, that we're not being able to do things we're entitled to do. We feel fine about it. We're absolutely, we're kind of shocked that this happened. It all seemed to happen very quickly, and it's kind of still something that you process, like you were saying. You're still processing it. We're all still processing it. But thanks to our situation, it really hasn't affected us as negatively as it has many, many other people. So we're really very lucky. And we recognize that. We appreciate how lucky we are, and we're not trying to diminish anyone else's experiences because of that. It's so many people are going through so much worse. They're having terrible, they're unemployed. Or they don't know if they're going to get their job back. They don't have savings. They don't have someone to rely on to help them. They have kids who are in school and need schooling at home and are just, it's a nightmare for a lot of them. They can't work and take care of their kids at the same time because they don't have resources for that. They don't have multiple computers. They don't have, those people are suffering. Those people are really having a hard time of it. And I hope that in the end it's worth it, that we can emerge from this and all be safer and it's going to be a different world. I mean, people are just going to take things for granted. I have a very good friend who was born in Korea. He's a younger person. He's in his to me, he's younger. He's in his 30s. And he grew up with the culture of you just wear a mask outside. It's just the thing to do, especially in the winter. He grew up with that culture. It's not meant to protect people around you. It's meant to protect yourself. There's some interesting Korean beliefs about illness and the winter time and sickness, but it's not just him. I mean, it's not just Korea, it's Asia. I know other people from China and Asian countries who wearing a mask, especially in the winter time, is considered, a socially correct thing to do. And it has been for a couple of generations. So he freaks out seeing people around here not wearing masks, not being, sensible about this. He's terrified to go outside. He's staying home, and he's lucky that he works at home also, but he's scared to go out. And I don't, it's what he grew up with, that feeling. And I wonder how many people are going to continue feeling this way after, once we quote unquote crush the curve, how long it's going to take for people to decide, oh, I don't need to do this anymore, versus people who say, I'm good. But I'm going to keep doing this thing just in case. Just in case someone around me, or just in case I'm sick and someone around me might get sick from me. And being here in New York, where we have a large Asian population, I'm used to seeing people walking around with masks in K-Town and Chinatown and places like that. K-Town is Koreatown, places like that. And, so I wonder how many of us are going to keep it up, and for social, as a social thing, just as a everyday thing now. Because we've been taking our temperature every day, just even though temperature isn't really a reliable indicator of anything, but we got into the habit, we developed the habit. And I think the highest either of us has had this entire time has been 98.8. So that's the highest, and our normal temperature range seems to be in the 97 point X range. So, we're like, oh, it's 98.3, go to bed, take an aspirin. We're joking about it, but it's, it's something that it's just simple. You just take your temperature, hey, I feel a little off today. Let me take my temperature, let me take it sooner. We're on multiple medications, both of us. So, it's, we don't like getting sick. We hate it. So it's kind of nice that, the worst thing that happened to me was was like in April, I had a minor sinus infection that, made me feel kind of off for like 3 days. And my cough was a lot worse. And I was like freaking out, but I got better. And I really don't think I had anything worse than a sinus infection, because it felt like every other sinus infection I've ever had. So, and I'm thinking, well, what if, how could I get sick if I was being so careful? And apparently I didn't. So yay. However, once testing is starting to be offered now to pretty much everyone in New York City. So I'm going to check with my doctor and see about getting a test for both of us as soon as we feel comfortable going to the doctor, which is like 10 blocks away. So the state senator email that we got, we get every day has recent updates, volunteers and supplies needed, pause COVID policy, guidance, closure updates, non-essential business reopenings, online meetings, town halls, webinars, hotlines, websites, other resources, social distancing, preventive measures and enforcement, research and testing, physical and mental health care, health insurance, census, food, education, schools, libraries, student loans, MTA, transportation, job openings, just it goes on and on. She's covering all the bases here. Yeah, the thing is, it's really hard to get deliveries here because, my gosh, there's a lot of people who live just in our building, just in our block, just on our street, just in our neighborhood, and there's only so many deliveries to go around. So, being able to run outside and go to the supermarket feels really, really good that, oh boy, that's a delivery that someone else who really can't leave their house now can get, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but
when you add it up to how many have, multiple residents, it's about 50 people in the building. So it's a lot of people just here, and a lot of us are still getting deliveries, through the mail. Like, gosh, we just ordered some more coffee by mail because we like to get, fair trade, organic, bird friendly coffee. So we just ordered that online again, and they just put it in the mail, and we get it. I did a couple of Amazon orders early on before things got really nuts. I was able to get a Whole Foods delivery last month of just a whole bunch of stuff that was not really good to lug, for us to lug. But I feel guilty doing it because so many other people, were waiting for that delivery window. And I'm like, well, they might have kids, or they might have, a disability, or they might have, an old person in their house who needs special food or something. And so as long as I'm able to run around the neighborhood at all, and, we can make it to Walgreens, we can make it to CVS, we can make it to the supermarket and get stuff we need. We can buy milk, in like 5 different stores within a 2-block radius. We're good. It's not a huge deal for us to be, staying close to home, but a lot of people can't do that. There's a lot of areas, a lot of streets in this area where you have to go multiple blocks to get to essential things like that, and not get ripped off, so. And the building on our corner, or the big building on our corner, the big luxury apartment building that is 35 stories high and has, I think it has, I'm trying to remember from the time I browsed the real estate website out of curiosity, I think they have like 6 or 7 apartments per floor. That's a lot of people right there. Yep, it's a big building. It goes all the way from 81st Street to 80th Street. It's a block long, one building. And it's, yeah. Well, we're the only 2-bedroom apartment in this building. Most of them are studio, and it's like half studio and half 1 bedroom. The rest of the building, the luxury building is pretty mixed. They also have they have studio 1 and 2 bedroom. I think they even have some 3 bedroom, and there's a lot of kids in that building. Well, anyway, the point is that, the thing is, though, a lot of people fled the neighborhood. They had summer homes, or they went to their parents in South Dakota or whatever. So, so our neighborhood is not as packed full of people right now as it normally could be at this time of year. But, our supermarket's been getting daily deliveries. That hasn't been an issue so far, at least. You can get pretty much anything you absolutely might need. It may not be the brand you're used to. It may not be the size of the container you're used to. We're starting to see now, like, restaurant and Costco kinds of packaging show up in certain stores that we didn't see before. But it's, you can still get frozen carrots. You can still get, frozen pizza and, orange juice and 5 brands of milk, and anything you need is like right there. Like I say, it's like and wine, very important, wine. Oh, empty. Mostly empty. Well, back in March they were mostly empty. In April they were definitely still empty, but in May people were just out more. Definitely out more, but still nowhere near as crowded as they used to be, because people aren't doing the normal kinds of errands they used to do. Like Ed will go out in the morning before he starts work. He starts work usually around 9:30 or 10. He's lucky that way. And he'll get up at 7 and to go walk to Central Park and back, and to do his bird watching. And he reports that at that time, which normally would have been a ton of people commuting, there's no one out there. There's just hardly anyone out there. Our neighbor down the hall, she reports the same thing. She likes to get up early and take a walk on the East River Esplanade, and nobody. She said there's no one out there, whereas previously there used to be a ton of people out running and bicycling and getting their exercise in before going to work. And she's like, apparently now they can do it anytime, so they're not doing it first thing. And I have a friend nearby on 79th Street who did not want to leave her apartment at all for 2 months. She was just letting her husband and her son go out and do all the errands and do anything they needed doing, and she was just going to stay home and do she works 70 hours a week sometimes online. Being a lawyer, she's got a shit ton of stuff to do, excuse my language. But she she's finally given in and gone out a little bit, because we had to keep persuading her that there's no one out there. There's literally no one out there who is just suddenly going to turn on you and sneeze on you. You're not going to be in danger if you take a walk around the block. And she just wasn't persuaded. She was really not in a good headspace.
I get that.
And we finally, a bunch of people, including her husband, finally were able to persuade her, like, at least, because they can look out the window. She can look out the window and see there's no one out on the street. They live 6 floors up, but she can look down and say, oh yeah, there's like 4 people where there used to be 20, or something like that. There's no one riding the buses, except essential workers. You're not supposed to ride the bus unless you're essential worker. Of course, they're not checking that. Sure. A friend of mine who's considered essential personnel, he's a translator in the state government offices in Midtown. He takes the one train from the Upper West Side down to Times Square, and then changes to the 7 train to Grand Central, and then back again. And every now and then he'll post a picture of his morning commute, and there's no one on the train. And he's leaving the house at like 8 o'clock, and there's like 3 people in each car when he gets on the train. Whereas there used to be, dozens of people in each car by the time he'd get on. And similarly, the 7 train is mostly empty, and Grand Central is mostly empty, and the streets in Midtown are mostly empty. And he's bringing his lunch with him every day, which is good because he's a good cook. Because there's not that many places to get lunch. A lot of the places that normally deal with lunch workers, they have to close because they weren't getting any business. I think it's kind of tough actually on our local wildlife, because I think the pigeons and the sparrows aren't getting as many dropped food offerings as they used to. So it's actually harder for them. In the park, they're fine. The ones in the parks are okay. And actually we do have a bunch of crazy people who love to feed the pigeons and just, dump bags of bird seed, in tree pits here and there. So I'm on 81st, the Green Market's on 82nd, and it's just boom. I can actually see it from my window. And, so I'm not an early riser. So I normally would get to the Green Market around 11 or noon, and it closes at 2 normally. So, and they're having a lot of, they've chalked lines on the sidewalks, and saying, stand here for the bread vendor, stand here for the fish vendor, stand here for the apples and veggies, stand here for these veggies. And people definitely respect it. And when I went there this last Saturday, I got there was around noon, And it was, a fair number of people out and on the streets everywhere, getting stuff done, getting their errands done, going to the supermarket, hitting whatever stores they needed to do. And when I got to the market, everybody was like, wow, we this is good now. It's not nearly as crazy as it was all morning. It was like packed here this morning, and I was like, wow, I'm glad I waited, but so everybody is very focused, I think, on their activities. They go out, they do what they need to do, and they go home. It's not like you're not just, and there's still a lot of people running, a lot of runners and joggers on the street. Still a lot of people using City Bike, though not as many as there could be, because City Bike is right now in big trouble because they're not getting any renewals, because people don't know when they'll next have a job to need the City Bike for. A lot of people who commute with City Bikes. It's a bike share. It's a bike share app and system, and Citibank runs it, which is why it's called City Bike. They funded it, so their logo and their advertising are all over the bikes and all over the kiosks and all over the bike racks, which are a lot of bike racks. There's a ton of them just on my street. Between here and between York Avenue and Fifth, there's like 5 bike rack areas. But the one down the street from us is normally always empty. People are using it a lot, but it's not empty now. It's almost always got more than half the bikes are still in it, no matter what time of day you go past, as an example. So there's still a ton of bikes out on the street because delivery guys, there's a ton of delivery guys out, but people just walking around aimlessly or visiting friends or going to restaurants, that's not what's happening. That isn't happening. So the people on the streets are focused on their errands, basically, or they're like Ed, who's just going out for exercise once a day, but there's not that many of them. Although if you go to the East River Esplanade, tons of people just strolling and enjoying the air and enjoying the river, like in any park, although the parks are generally less full than they used to be. And so yeah, I and there's hardly any people, just people. We have a lot of bars in the neighborhood too. Nobody's can't go to the bars, so those people aren't, wandering home whenever. So yeah, it's still pretty empty, but there's always someone on the street. I mean, there's always like at least 1 or 2 people out. It's insane, and it's killed so many good places, not just restaurants, but other kinds of businesses that didn't own their own building or didn't couldn't work a deal because it's just greed. And there's no nobody's, people have been talking about small business rent stabilization or rent control or longer term leases, or something like that for a long time, and nothing happens. The landlords are still the ones who call all the shots. And if they decide they'd rather leave a storefront empty for 2 years because they, aren't satisfied with getting only double the old rent that they were getting, nobody penalizes them for that. They can go ahead and do that. In fact, some of them get tax breaks for it. It's their building. Well, on the other hand, my husband's co-op, which his old apartment is still, he still has the old building he lived in, the co-op he lived in that we still own. They have a ground floor storefront tenant, restaurant tenant. And during the periods where it's been empty because the tenant defaulted or the tenant closed for whatever reason, there was no tax break for that building. They were out that rent. They didn't get any breaks. They never have gotten any breaks, but other landlords do, and we're not sure how fair that is. I don't think it's fair at all. If you removed the tax incentives for them to keep storefronts empty, a lot more businesses would have been stable, and a lot more neighborhood, hangouts and important businesses would be still there, years later, instead of being forced to close and their owners to move away or do something else. Yeah. Although the real estate market's another thing that's going to go crazy in New York now because, a lot of people aren't going to want to live in a city. They were going to think, oh my God, it's too dangerous to live in such a dense place. And they're going to make the other places denser. It's not really a good solution.